Hi everyone, this is Tyler Dallas from the F.W. de Klerk Foundation, and you're listening to the Constitution at Work podcast, the series for people interested in constitutional matters and transformation in South Africa. With me, as always, is Dave Stewart, chairperson of the F.W. de Klerk Foundation. Today, we have a special episode to talk about the foundation's upcoming conference in Johannesburg about property rights. Dave, we have continuously highlighted the centrality of property rights for a secure and flourishing society and commercial environments. We have monitored legislation like the Expropriation Act, the Land Courts Act, and the Unlawful Entering on Premises Bill, which undermine property rights as enshrined under Section 25 of the Constitution. What can people expect at our conference?
The purpose of the conference, Tyler, is to accentuate the importance of property rights for all South Africans. The goal here isn't to say we don't need land reform, we don't need to change. What we're saying is that, what we want to say is that all successful societies respect property rights. And one of the great challenges in our society at the moment is to make sure that all South Africans have access to property rights. So the conference will really be in two parts. The first part will deal with the extension of property rights to all South Africans. And there we're going to be asking David Ansara of the Free Market Foundation to talk about their very interesting project to issue title deeds to Black homeowners in our urban areas. One of the greatest and most positive facts about South Africa is that 9.5 million households, overwhelmingly Black South Africans, own their own homes, but they don't have title deeds. Now, this represents an enormous amount of capital that is locked up. In fact, it has been estimated that it might be in the region of 1.5 to 1.8 trillion rand. And to put things in perspective, that is 2 or 3 times the total value of all of the agricultural land in South Africa put together. So we want David to talk to us about their experience in extending and granting title deeds to homeowners. And then we also have no problem at all with the idea of land reform. In fact, our constitution mandates land reform, but it's a question of what sort of land reform. I mean, land reform could be anything from the nationalization of all of the land in the country in the hands of the state, or it could be a system in which land is transferred to people who own it. Now, the outcomes are completely different in those kinds of land reform. So what we have done is we've asked Amy Barclay of Agri South Africa to talk to us about some of the very, very positive proposals that have been made by the agricultural sector on how we can make land reform work in practice. So that for us is going to be an interesting way of really expanding property rights for all South Africans. And then we have managed to arrange an interview with Hernando Soto, who is the world famous expert on unlocking capital in the hands of slum dwellers in Peru and small farmers and peasants. We want to learn from him about his experience. How do you make this work in practice? So for us, the interview with Hernando Soto is going to be very exciting. We also have a pre-recorded message from Professor Fernando Spiritto of the Catholic University of Caracas on Venezuela's experience of the implosion of property rights. What happens in practice in a society when property rights are in fact eroded. So that's the first part of the conference, Tyler. It will be concluded with a panel discussion by the speakers, really looking at positive ways of extending property rights to all South Africans. As far as the second part of the conference is concerned, it deals much more specifically with the threat posed to property rights by the expropriation bill, which has passed through Parliament and is awaiting the signature of the President, together with the Land Courts bill, which will, it seems to us, make it much easier for the state to get past the requirement in the Constitution that any compensation for expropriated property must be decided by a court. But then it depends on the reliability and impartiality of that court. So we're very concerned about the Land Courts bill as well. So this is going to be the accent on the second part of the conference. Do you have any questions about the first part?
Do we not also have another speaker joining us for the first part, Phumlani Majozi?
Well, Phumlani is going to be a keynote speaker.
Oh, okay.
And he's going to talk about the centrality of property rights for all successful societies. And Phumlani is one of our leading columnists. He is a senior fellow at African Liberty, and his address will really span the two sides. For the first part, on the importance of extending property rights to all South Africans, and as far as the second part of the conference is concerned, the importance of protecting property rights. So Phumlani will be the keystone in the conference, and he will be participating in the first panel discussion too.
Great. And then after lunch, we'll be speaking to?
Well, after lunch, we're going to shift the focus from extending property rights to all South Africans to the whole question of defending property rights from unwarranted intrusion and erosion by the state. And here we'll be focusing on the expropriation bill. And some people say, oh, look, this has been around for such a long time, it's not a threat. But the fact is it's gone through Parliament. It's waiting the signature of the President. And it is an essential part of the ANC's National Democratic Revolution. The whole idea of radical economic transformation is a radical change in property ownership, in land, shares, everything in the country. We can't ignore this. And so it's going to be very important to unpack the expropriation bill once again, to find out what its ideological roots are, what sort of threat it imposes, what its intentions are. And there we've got the country's greatest expert on NDR, that is Dr. Anthea Jeffery of the Institute of Race Relations, to talk about this. So Anthea is going to talk about the bill, what it entails, what the implications are of the Land Courts bill together with the expropriation bill. And then after that, we have Theo Jager, the Chief Executive Officer of SAI, one of our agricultural organizations, to talk about the implications for agriculture and food security of the expropriation bill. If this is implemented, what does it mean for the farming sector in South Africa? And Theo is really one of the country's greatest experts on the whole spectrum of agriculture. And then we're also, of course, very concerned about the impact of the expropriation bill on the economy. And we have one of the country's top economists to unpack this, and that's Dawie Roodt. He's going to talk about the implications for investment, for the economy, for economic growth of the expropriation bill, should it ever be implemented in a serious fashion by the government. And we will then have a second panel discussion toward the end of our conference, which you will be moderating, and where we'll discuss these things. We'll discuss the likelihood of the expropriation bill being adopted and implemented the way it is written. We will discuss the kind of action that civil society can take to oppose it. We will think about ways and means of ensuring that property rights are protected for all South Africans.
Thank you, Dave. It's certainly a fantastic lineup. As you say, we're going to be looking at the extension of property rights and then the defense of property rights. But often these seem to be polar opposites when we're reading anything covering land reform or the expropriation bill or property rights. Will this conference reconcile the extension of property rights and the defense of property rights for the audience?
Well, we hope so, because we think it's indivisible. The simple reality is that there are no successful societies anywhere in the world or anywhere in history that have not respected property rights. There is also a link between owning property and freedom. If one looks at the correlations between property rights and a whole array of positive developments in society, economic growth, freedom, inequality, they are all linked positively to respect for property rights. So for us, extending property rights to all South Africans, defending property rights against state intrusion are all part of the same story.
For those people who are perhaps listening in thinking, well, I don't own property, I don't have land, a farmland that anyone's going to want to expropriate, why should the general public tune into this conference? How is this relevant to them?
Well, nearly everybody does own property of some kind or another. Take, for example, those 9.5 million households in Black urban areas in South Africa. This is a huge asset waiting to be leveraged. And it is one of the most positive factors, I think, in the South African story at the moment. So everybody has an interest in property rights, because if you have a society where property rights are not respected, then there's going to be no economic growth. There's going to be no investment. And the job that you thought you had might go up in smoke. So we are all invested in this. We're all invested in the fundamental requirements for successful society.
So how do people join, Dave?
Well, we're going to be live streaming the conference. And we still have a few places available at the conference itself if anybody's interested in joining us. It'll be a very interesting day. There'll be lunch, and you will then be able to share the views of the country's top experts on these crucial matters.
Thank you, Dave, and thank you to our audience for joining us for this episode of the Constitution at Work. As Dave said, there are few spaces left to join us in person for the 14th of July conference in Johannesburg. If you are interested, email us at info@fwdeclerk.org. You can also join us virtually by following us on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, and Twitter at FW de Klerk Foundation. Through these platforms, we'll also be hosting a property rights survey where you can send in your questions for the panel discussions. Remember to like, subscribe, and turn on post notifications to be alerted when our next video is up. If you have feedback on today's episode, please feel free to have your say in the comments section. We look forward to checking in again soon.